And now we'll move on to our next session. So again, I'll briefly share my screen because we are heading to Atlanta right now, a major US business center known for its logistic infrastructure and innovation ecosystem. And we are joined by Stefan Harrigan, who is Senior Manager of Global Business Development at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, who will lead this session called Atlanta Business Innovation and Global Connection Hub. Stefan, thank you so much for being here with us today. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luciano, and hopefully I can just share my screen here very quickly. And if that's not coming through, please do let me know. Ready.
It's loading.
Well, while that's
There you
loading,
go. Now we can see it perfectly. Yeah.
perfect, wonderful. Well, hello everyone. My name is Stefan Harrigan. I'm with the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And really, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this presentation, and I know I'm towards the end here of the program, so I'm mindful of the time. But if there's one thing that I'd like for you to take away, it's that Atlanta is really the business capital of the Southeast. This is not only one of the largest markets in terms of population, in terms of the density of the businesses that are here, but it is certainly one of the fastest growing regions and metros in the country. So to do business in Atlanta, you're not only positioning yourself with an existing cadre of stellar businesses, but you're really positioning yourself too at the center of growth in the southeast of the U.S. A little bit about the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and here you can see our executive committee of the chamber. We are one of the oldest chambers in the country, 166 years old, founded in 1859. And our executive committee is comprised of the executives and leadership of some of the largest and best known brands in the world. That committee really is reflective, I think, of the diversity too of the region's businesses. And while we, as a chamber, of course, represent the business community, act as the voice of the business community, at our core, we have always been an economic development organization. And so we'll act to certainly convene our investors and the companies and businesses that comprise the Metro Atlanta region, along with the universities and civic organizations. But we're always doing that with an eye towards how can we be a better region, more better positioned, more welcoming, more inclusive, more equitable with our communities that we serve. So really taking a holistic view towards how we can not only be a great place for business to locate, but to attract talent and ensure that community continues to thrive. In our work at the Chamber, and on the economic development side, everything I should mention that we do in economic development is gratis and confidential. I'll talk more but specifically about the services that we offer near the end of the presentation, but all just to say that everything that we do is gratis and we're not membership driven. So we're not doing this with the aim of then recruiting companies to invest in the chamber. We're fortunate to be funded by a very strong group of those corporates, some of which you just saw on the previous slide. But our services and economic development are really centered around three core teams. I'm here representing the external engagement team of the chamber. And external engagement is comprised of industry and subject matter experts. My expertise is specifically the international side, working with international companies as they consider U.S. market entry and hopefully choose Atlanta, helping them navigate that process of all the complexities of cross-border business and establishing themselves in the U.S. We also have industry experts on that team who focus on everything from aerospace, defense, and cybersecurity to logistics and advanced manufacturing, clean tech, as well as digital and financial services. We then also have a project management team, which is focused specifically for new companies, so companies that we're looking to recruit to the region, and a community development team that then works once a company is located here to support them throughout their continued growth needs. So both the new business side as well as the existing industry really helps us make sure that we're working with companies in the long term and not just when they initially establish their business here. Very quickly on the footprint that we serve, you've heard from our name, Metro Atlanta. As that implies, we don't just cover the city of Atlanta, which is roughly the circle that you see in the middle there, where the star is, but we cover the 29 county region. And I mentioned this is one of the largest markets in the country. There are about 6.4 million inhabitants just in this 29 county region. It's about 23,000 square kilometers, or a little bit over 5,000 square miles. And this is based off of what the US Census Bureau designates is the Metro Atlanta region. This really allows us to work across a wide range of industries. So, of course, not just the office and professional services side in the urban core, but then also in advanced manufacturing and all types of aerospace. And the list really goes on and on. So if you're considering any number of these counties, or you don't know where to go within this region, we're here to help identify the best suitable location for your business. In economic development, of course, we love superlatives, and here are just a few that share a little bit more about Atlanta's characteristics and nature. This has been named consistently one of the most livable cities in the country. Consistently also one of the top places to start a career, especially for new graduates and recent graduates, which is a very important metric for us, considering that talent and workforce is one of the most important factors for business. And this is also the number three best city for headquarters, in addition to being home to one of the highest concentrations of Fortune 500 headquarters. So you can see how these different factors really play in together, having a legacy of a strong corporate headquarters density here, along with a very appealing place for talent to both come and stay once they are here. In the US market, over the last few years, we've seen some pretty interesting trends when it comes to population changes and demographic changes in the US. What we've really seen is population moving away from these traditional strongholds of the West Coast, of the Northeast, and moving principally to the South and the Southeast. So if you think Texas, Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, that's where the bulk of the population growth is happening. And Atlanta has really been outpacing the US average for several years now. Just last year, we added an additional 75,000 people our our Metro Atlanta population footprint. The region has grown almost exponentially. Was formerly about 10th or 9th largest market, and last year became the sixth largest market, surpassing Miami, the DC Baltimore area, as well as the Philadelphia metro regions. And those last two in Atlanta continue to be relatively close in terms of population, changing just by a few thousand every year. But all to say that to grow that rapidly says something about the significant demographic shifts that we're having in the US. But what's interesting in addition to that demographic shift is the cost structure and the way that Atlanta is compared and the situation of the cost of living and cost of doing business relative to other major metros in the US. So despite having such a fast-growing population and continuing to be one of the top 10 largest metros in the country, the cost structure is one of the most competitive. And what you see here in the bottom left, for instance, in cost of living, where the US average is 100, and the index, which takes things like milk, gas, electric costs, the US average is 100, Atlanta sits around 103. By contrast, there are metros in the US that are well over 200. And the same is the same case in terms of cost of doing business. And I have another comparative chart here coming up shortly. But really just thinking about when you're a business that's first entering the US market, of course, cost can play a very important factor when thinking of how far can your dollar go. That's not the only factor, of course, and that's really the purpose of my presentation here is to show those very different but important factors. But this is one that I think you should really be looking at. Where can your dollar go the furthest, and where can you have access to all the different other key factors for a fraction of the cost? Strategic location is another thing that we find that companies really prioritize, and whether that's in terms of the movement of people or goods. And that's where Georgia and Atlanta are, again, very favorably positioned. Atlanta's entire existence is actually owed to logistics. The reason Atlanta was founded was because it was the terminating point of the rail lines going from north to south and east to west. And that is still very much ingrained in our identity. This is the state of Georgia and Atlanta are home to some of the most robust rail freight networks in the country. Atlanta is home to the world's busiest airport, has been the world's busiest airport for well over a decade now. And from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, you can actually access 80% of the US market within a 2-hour flight. The same is also true when driving, except in terms of 2 days. So 80% of the US market you can reach within a 2-day drive. And we like to use this nighttime visual of the US because I think it really exemplifies the population distribution. You see all the lights in the eastern half of the US, and really, I think that reflects quite accurately the population distribution where 80% of the US market is located in this eastern half of the country. So when you're positioned in a place like Atlanta and in Georgia, again, whether you're moving people, whether you're moving goods, you have very strong, quick access, not just from a geographic standpoint, but because of the logistics infrastructure that's based here. And I'll finish by mentioning the seaport down in Savannah, which is actually the single largest container terminal in the US and the fastest growing port in the nation as well. Depending on the metrics that you look at, considered about third largest in the country in terms of the volume, and has space to grow, and the Georgia Port Authority is continuing to invest in that growth and expansion. So we'll see those numbers continue to rise in the years to come. So all taken together, really, this state and this region are our logistics powerhouse, and you can very easily move from this region to pretty much anywhere else in the country. Quick visual in terms of the air connectivity, of course, with nonstop flights to many destinations across Latin America. I believe Delta now also has, together with its partnership with LATAM Airlines, even stronger connectivity throughout the entire Latin American region. But one of the incredible benefits of being in a place like Atlanta is the access to other major markets as well as smaller regional hubs. So, of course, daily nonstop flights to New York, to Houston, to Miami, to Los Angeles. But then if you have clients in perhaps smaller markets where they're only serviced by regional airports, there's a pretty strong chance that Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson will have a nonstop flight there, which some other places do not have. Here's that cost of doing business comparison that I was mentioning earlier. Again, really putting into perspective how, despite being one of the largest markets in the country, still incredibly competitive and well-positioned below other metros that are certainly of similar size and even some that are smaller. So again, just taking that into consideration as you're looking in the US market. For those who aren't as familiar with the corporate landscape in Atlanta, just including here this slide on the Fortune 500 headquarters that are based here. And I mentioned earlier that Atlanta is home to one of the highest concentrations of these Fortune 500s. Fortune 500 firms are the largest publicly traded companies, and these are probably some names that you know well, like the Coca-Cola Company, UPS, Delta Airlines, but also some perhaps lesser known brands and companies like ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange, which actually owns and operates the New York Stock Exchange. You also have AGCO, one of the largest agricultural machinery manufacturers in the world with facilities all around the globe. Global Payments, again, a financial services or fintech powerhouse that's based here. Newell Brands, which owns brands like Rubbermaid and Sharpie. And really what you can take away from this slide is, again, the diversity of industries that are represented in this region. Certainly at an enterprise level, but also at a small, medium-sized enterprise level that I'll get to in the next slide. So when you're considering where are your customers, who are your business partners, and where you could be well positioned with them, this is a compelling argument for many of the companies that we work with. But not just at that legacy corporate side, the Inc. 5000 list is another metric to look at in terms of where it might make sense for your business to be. And the Inc. 5000 list is the list of the fastest growing privately held companies. And again, Atlanta continues to be positioned quite highly on that list. So these are firms that are experiencing sometimes triple digit growth. And so it's really reflective of an ecosystem that has what businesses needs to be successful and to have that kind of long-term uh, and rapid growth. So I encourage you to certainly look at this list as well if you haven't already. There might be companies in a similar space as yours, or companies that you've heard of, and just seeing where are some of those clusters and concentrations in different metros in the country. I also wanted to highlight some of the recent major announcements that we've seen. Again, reflective of both the demographic shift that we're seeing in the US, kind of these large corporates and investments moving away from some of those traditional strongholds, but frankly, also just the changing characteristics in the US when it comes to access to talent. So Duracell just announced earlier this year that they are moving their global research headquarters from the Northeast to Georgia, to Atlanta specifically. And that's really tied closely with the access to the talent that they have here with the universities, which I'll touch on in just a moment. Mercedes-Benz also just announced expanding their US headquarters, which was already here in Atlanta, now to their North American headquarters, adding up to 500 new jobs and a new R&D center. And then there's smaller companies like Veldschoen, one of the best known shoe brands in South Africa, that have also chosen to locate here. Even though this might not be a capital for fashion or for shoe design and apparel necessarily, they still found what they needed to be successful in the US market and to really propel their brand forward. So really we're working as a chamber and as a region with companies of all sizes and across industries to support them in this market. Not to talk too much or belabor the point of talent and workforce, but because it has been one of such critical importance for the industries and companies that we've been working with over the last years, I did want to mention this here. Atlanta is actually one of only 3 cities in the US that's home to 3 or more R1 universities. And R1 universities are those universities designated as having the highest level of research activity. So no matter which industry you're in or what size your company is, you're probably going to be interacting with graduates or people who have connections, experience at any number of these institutions. And being able to leverage that is a tremendous asset. So certainly feel free to look into these institutions and the kinds of programs that they offer. If you have very specific needs for your talent workforce, or do let us know, and we're more than happy to connect you to them. Many of these universities have economic development offices housed within their walls that can be of assistance in identifying ways to connect with key talent. Again, if you have very specific needs, or even just trying to better understand how many engineers, for instance, does Georgia Tech graduate, or people that are in the life sciences space or biomedical engineering at Emory University, trying to pinpoint those types of talent pools. I also wanted to touch on in a little bit more depth the diversity of industry in the Metro Atlanta region. It's sometimes a little bit tricky when companies ask us, what is Atlanta known for? Because while we're known for a number of things, but we're also very good at across a wide range of sectors. And so unlike, for instance, a Houston that is an energy and oil and gas powerhouse, of course, and it's known for that industry, Atlanta isn't known for one specific thing. But we tend to think that that's actually a really good thing because it allows us to be resilient. It allows our industry to be resilient during times of economic downturn. So financial technology. In New York, you're probably well aware, certainly a banking center, if not the banking epicenter of the US. But what some folks don't know is that Atlanta is actually the capital for financial technology and payments processing in the US. So about a little over 65% of all debit, credit, gift card transactions in the US run through an Atlanta-based company. Think of Fiserv, Global Payments that I just mentioned earlier, and the list goes on and on. Cybersecurity being another major industry for us here, with the U.S. Army Cyber Command located in Augusta, Georgia, and a lot of synergy that takes place between the financial technology industry and the major corporates and enterprises that we have here who have significant cybersecurity needs. That's really helped us build one of the strongest cybersecurity ecosystems in the country. I'll touch on clean tech in just a moment, and the clean tech space, since it's one that's developed rather rapidly over the last few years here in Georgia and in Atlanta. Aerospace as well, being home to one of the most comprehensive aerospace ecosystems in the nation. And then again, a nod back to the reason for our existence, logistics and infrastructure. This is one of the top supply chain markets in the country when it comes to the industry concentration, the assets, the infrastructure, and all of those pieces coming together. So aerospace, as I mentioned, being one of the key industries that we have located here. I've mentioned home to the world's busiest airport, but what many people don't also know is that this is home to one of the highest densities and um, uh, well, densities of graduates in different fields in aerospace, whether it's from masters and graduate degrees to technical colleges and programs throughout the state. Just a quick visual of what the distribution of that ecosystem looks like. So, of course, not just on the passenger transport side with companies like Delta, Wheels Up. So we call this more the operational piece. Think of your traditional commercial and private operations. But MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, is another key industry where this is a really leading region for that, with either the headquarters or major operations for many companies in that space. The education side, I mentioned that with the number of graduates on the previous slide, but home to some of the top institutions, again, whether from the technical college side to the universities, who produce thousands and thousands of graduates in the space. And then lastly, when it comes to manufacturing and aircraft and component manufacturing, some of the leading brands in the space, Hermeus, for instance, which is working on hypersonic travel, Archer, which will actually just announce its partnership with the LA 28 Olympics for producing eVTOL travel in Los Angeles. So being home to the manufacturing facilities and headquarters for some of the leading companies in this space is really, really exciting. On the automotive front, people oftentimes associate perhaps Detroit with the automotive industry in the US, and that's certainly with good reason, being home to the big three. But what others might be less familiar with is the fact that the Southeast is really the epicenter of foreign automotive OEMs in the United States. A lot of that is also centered in Atlanta when it comes to the headquarters. I mentioned Mercedes-Benz earlier, but Porsche North America is headquartered in Atlanta. Rivian announced its East Coast headquarters in Atlanta just a few months ago. And then the manufacturing facilities and operations for many of those OEMs span throughout the Southeast more broadly. So if you're in that automotive space as a supplier, again, whether it's on the technology front or more on the actual manufacturing side, chances are good that you'll want to be positioned quite closely to this broad range of potential buyers and partners in the region. In terms of life sciences, this is one of the most fast growing industries that we have here in the region, with some of the best known, again, brands and names in that space. In addition to companies like Boehringer Ingelheim, Gerresheimer, UCB, which has its U.S. headquarters in Atlanta. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, is also actually headquartered in Atlanta, and that's the largest federal agency outside of Washington, D.C. So a wide range of partners and resources that are also available in this space. I'm happy to connect you to those if you're interested in learning more about the life science sector in Metro Atlanta. I mentioned earlier that I was going to get to clean tech more specifically because this is one that has an area that has grown rather significantly, especially in the wake of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which Georgia was one of the top beneficiaries for over the last few years. Investments like Rivian, Hyundai, Kia, Qcell, Sanwa, having major production facilities, whether it's in the electric vehicle space, battery production, solar panel production. These are all leading companies, and of course, bringing with them many of their suppliers that are fueling that continued growth of the industry here. But our companies, both new and existing, have been hard at work at really revolutionizing and bringing clean tech to Georgia. Our utility, Georgia Power, the largest utility in the state, has pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050, and it's already well on its way to that goal. Has also conducted some of the largest tests and made some of the largest investments in carbon-free power production with, for instance, Plant Vogtle coming online, which is the first nuclear power facility in the US in over 30 years to be built, and also working on hydrogen research. At the intersection of clean tech and sustainable aviation fuel, LanzaJet just opened its facility, the first ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel facility in the world just last year in southern Georgia. So really home to a rather robust and again diverse ecosystem when it comes to clean tech. Film and television, if you've ever seen the Georgia Peach at the end of a show or a movie that you've watched over the last few years, chances are you've probably seen one of those. Maybe that has allowed you or inspired you to look a little bit further into what's happening in the industry in Georgia. But really, this is now one of the most popular places for film and TV production in the United States. It's been home to more feature films being produced in Georgia than any other state in the country since 2016. And it's now also home to one of the largest sound stages in the country. So if you're in that space, of course, California is the birthplace of film in the U.S., but Georgia is really now the preeminent production side, where a lot of that production is taking place. And last but not least, of course, in addition to access to all those industries and leading companies that I mentioned, one of the benefits of being in a metro like Atlanta is access to a much broader range too of the conventions and trade shows that come here. By virtue of having one of the largest exhibition spaces, the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, we host some of the largest events in the world. Shows like MODEX, which is coming up actually just next year, alternates between ProMat and Chicago. Other shows like IPPE or the International Woodworking Festival. And so these are all great opportunities for you to, of course, get in front of prospective businesses and customers without the need for having to travel across the country or across the world. So you not only, of course, have your businesses, your potential business partners in the region, but then you have shows like the ones I've just mentioned that are really great opportunities to connect with even further prospects. A quick note just on the innovation side for companies that might be in the startup sphere or looking at some of those resources. Atlanta is really home to one of the strongest innovation networks in the country. We're home to the fourth largest tech incubator, Atlanta Tech Village. That's in Buckhead, and it's actually expanding now with a second location. We're home to the first and oldest statewide tech incubator through the Advanced Technology Development Center. It's also housed on the Georgia Tech campus. A nod back to clean tech. The Cox Clean Tech Accelerator was launched just earlier this year. It is actually open to international companies. So if you're looking at, first of all, receiving some initial funding, which Cox provides for companies accepted into the accelerator, you not only receive that additional funding, but then you also have access to the entire network of Cox Enterprises. So if you're not familiar with them, it's a company that's in the media space, in the automotive space. So having that access is a really valuable piece to have. And then lastly, I'll also mention very quickly Georgia Tech's Enterprise Innovation Institute, or EI2 for short. I mentioned them because they also specifically have a program for international companies, the Soft Landing program, which helps guide companies through, I believe it's around 8 weeks or so, a good portion of which is virtual, and then 1 to 2 weeks in Atlanta proper, where they walk companies through the process of establishment, of getting ready for the market, cultural fluency, things like that, to really prepare them for the US market. So anybody who's interested in that, I'm more than happy to provide connections on that side. Coming up just in the next few weeks, Atlanta will also be hosting, once again, the Venture Atlanta Conference. This is one of the leading venture capital events in the US. and certainly largest of its kind in the East Coast. So if you're looking at raising funds, connecting with VCs, connecting with other founders, this is really the place to do so. And it's taking every year in greater and greater international dimension to it, with delegations coming, with different international governments having representation there. So certainly encourage you to participate if you can, and if you're interested in being more embedded in that space. When speaking about venture capital, another distinguishing factor for Atlanta is that corporate base, and not just the corporate base that we have, but the fact that many of these corporations have chosen to participate in a platform called Engage, where they actually provide their own corporate funds. So that's something that's rather unique to the Atlanta market, is hasn't been replicated quite to this scale around the rest of the U.S. And it's a great opportunity for companies that are, of course, on the one hand, looking for that capital when they're coming to the US, but then secondly, and I think more valuably, is access to those potential business partners. So companies like Delta, like Georgia Power, Chick-fil-A, the Home Depot, who are looking for that next technology or innovative solution to help propel their business forward. This is a really great platform that I encourage companies to take advantage of. And again, another thing that I'm happy to connect with you at a later time. Just to wrap up here on the different resources, and it sounds like these are probably pretty similar abroad, many of the organizations that are presented, but really we're here to be a guide for you on the Metro Atlanta region. To, of course, introduce you to the region to help you identify where is the best place to locate. But if you're not familiar with this region, then it's to provide you with the information and data for you to make the most informed decision. So we have an entire dedicated research and economic team led by a chief economist, one of the only chambers in the country to have a chief economist. And that could be anything from wage and labor statistics to examining different tax data, looking at demographic information for talent and workforce. Our team can also assist with site selection and real estate searches, providing industry connections. On my side, on the global piece, really walking companies through the process of establishing themselves in the US market. We have a great network of professional service providers and partners who work on a daily basis with international companies, guiding them through everything from immigration to banking to legal. And then everything that we do at the chamber, we do together with our partners at the state level. So the Georgia Department of Economic Development, as well as Georgia Power, the utility. And you will note that I did not talk or touch on incentives really. And that's something that we do not handle at the Metro Atlanta Chamber because we're a private entity. The incentives are handled at the various levels. So certainly at the state level, our partners at the Georgia Department of Economic Development would be able to speak to that. And then depending on the specific counties or municipalities where you might be locating, we would also work together with those authorities, those relevant authorities, on anything that might be available. But what I always like to caution, or rather flag for companies, is incentive should be really the icing on the cake. Those should be the things that are nice to have at the end of the day. But the real driving incentives for your decision on where to locate should be all those different factors that you've heard me and the others talk about. Those key business metrics, whether it's the talent and workforce availability, the infrastructure, the access to the market, the companies and potential business partners and prospects that are in a market that you would be looking to target. All of those are things that should really be incentivizing you in your decision of where you go locate. So I'd certainly encourage really focusing on those elements. And if you have specific questions about what those assets are in Atlanta that I didn't cover here, I'm more than happy to share both data as well as connections to who can speak to those at a later point. So here is my contact information if I can be of assistance to anybody looking at the region here. And I want to thank you all again for your time. I believe I'm the last one, so I hope you all enjoy the presentation, and thank you again for allowing me to speak.